Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Grant Cameron, and I have another spectacular show with Jimmy Blanchette, my friend from Quebec. I have another interview coming with another brilliant guy from Quebec next month, two of the smartest guys I've run across. But let me do a little intro here, which the Jimmy stuff I always say is like wow stuff. It's like when you look at this, you go, wow, that I didn't know that, I didn't know that. And it basically shows you the intricacies of the universe that you sort of think it's like, oh, it's some random thing and it's just happening. And then you get Jimmy come with his material, and he's got some new material tonight, and we're going to do a show a couple weeks down the road with some more material where he shows you the intricacies of the universe and how everything is absolutely connected to everything, and it gives you an indication that there is some bizarre strong intelligence behind this. I was writing up a conclusion to a book today, actually, and I was writing about this whole idea of that things are happening randomly. And the one example I used was an amoeba, which is the single cell amoeba, which is the smallest kind of cell you've got. And in order for it to form a second amoeba, it requires 12 quadrillion atoms. So these 12 quadrillion atoms, that's 12 with 18 zeros after it. These atoms sort of come out of nowhere, and they all know exactly which three-dimensional place to go in at what time, and they will reproduce between 207 and 670 billion base pairs. The human body only has 3 billion base pairs, and amoeba has up to 670 billion base pairs. And people will say, oh, it's just happening by accident. I mean, they just come out of nowhere and they just actually go by accident. And you go like, did you get hit in the head with a windmill? Like, come on. I mean, in Canada, we were maybe been born at night, but it wasn't last night. And that's what interests me so much about Jimmy's stuff. People say they never see me say wow so many times when Jimmy gets going, because that's what interests me. When I look at the UFO phenomena, I see that the more you look at it, the more complex it gets, the more you realize there is some sort of very powerful intelligence that's running the show. This is not happening by accident. And so that's what I was writing up today. This idea that you can take the smallest cell there is, and it's just so elaborate and it's so complex, and we have not got a clue. When it comes to UFOs, we haven't got a clue what's going on. I'm convinced of it now. And the same with the cell. You can describe the cell, you can describe what's happening, but in order for it to do it, that's a whole nother thing to explain it. But Jimmy does a good job in terms of showing this intricacy of the universe that you just go, wow. I mean, everything is so connected and so tied in, and so beautiful and so mathematical. And I'm fascinated to hear the new material you got. So welcome, Jimmy, and thank you for doing this for me. And because I always learn an awful lot from you, from what you bring up. And I think, as you know, I actually showed your stuff to a Nobel Prize winner. And of course, once you get down that road and you're in that little loop, you're not getting out of the loop. So he didn't catch it. But I think this is, to me, if there was a Nobel Prize to be given, I think this is critically important material that you've put together, however you got it, through inspiration or wherever you got it. But I'm just absolutely amazed every time I hear you talk and how you put all this stuff together, and the mathematics of the fine tuning of the universe.
Thank you for having me on the show, Grant. Always an honor and a pleasure. I really appreciate the opportunity, as always. It's very exciting. We do have a lot of great material to go through tonight. 70 slides, several short video clips. So, it's going to be, I'm very excited about it.
Beautiful. So am I. Let's go. Let's get started here.
All right. So let me just share my screen and put the presentation on.
And where are you now? You're in California or Arizona?
In Arizona. I'm not very far, actually, from Sedona. I'm maybe 50 miles from Sedona. Okay. Just landed here by, call it coincidence.
Just happened by accident. That's good.
All right. Here we go. Can you see the screen?
Yes, I can now. Yes.
Perfect. Excellent. So I'll just make sure here that I can also see you. Here we go. So what we're going to go through tonight is a little bit of follow up, or a continuation of what we went through last time. I titled this presentation Non-Human Intelligences Reveal the Keys to the Universe Yielding a New Physics Capable of Transforming Human Civilization. And today we're going to focus on Genesis of Creation, or the origin of creation.
Right on.
And what's beautiful about it, I heard your intro, which was very fascinating and interesting, is that when we dig deeper and peel off the onion, we realize that although there's the complexity of what we're seeing is just astronomical, that things cannot just be happen by chance, as you perfectly described. But at the source of it, there's a beauty, there's a simplicity, there's an elegance, really, and that's what I think hopefully we'll be able to show tonight. Let me go to the next slide. So Genesis of creation, and what we're going to see here is that really everything emerges from the division of the one division of that spark of energy, this spark of light energy, this original source, if you will. And mathematically we represent that by the number one in mathematics, right? The oneness, if you will, everything that is, all that is, all that exists, source, is represented by number one. And very simply, by creating a division in that source energy, through the fundamental harmonic of light 144, we can recreate an entire physics and recreate the quantum space to the material world of physicality we live in, up to the size of the universe, and explain gravity and so on. So we'll go through that. I do have a lot of material to present. Again, we have 70 slides, a few short videos. So we had just to step back a bit. So I'd like to take maybe 15-20 minutes, kind of set up the stage here, revisit a little bit of what we went through last time, just very briefly, to summarize briefly, and show some also, go through a few short video clips to go through some basic principles, because we want to make sure that the audience can follow through the entire interview and understands what we're talking about. So there's some basic concepts like the golden ratio, for instance, and things like that we're going to explain a little bit at the beginning, just to set the stage. It's going to take 15-20 minutes, and then we'll move on to the new material. I strongly suggest for those who are watching or going to be watching this interview to also watch the previous one that Grant and I did back in January of 2023. So boy, it's almost like a year already. So time flies.
That was a popular interview.
Yeah, there was a lot of viewership on it and interest, so we're very excited about it. I mean, that's really this material. Again, I'm not selling anything here. This material is just really for everyone out there that we can benefit or are interested. So it's really to share with the community. So that interview, that past interview, for those interested, you can find it on Grant's YouTube channel, Grant Cameron White House UFO. I put the icon here. You can see how, what icon to click on. And it's also on my own YouTube channel called Human Initiated Contact. It's about a 2-hour interview, a very similar format to what we're going to go through today. So as a brief recap, I mean, some of the key conclusions that, and things we went through last time is that really we live in a holographic universe in which really everything is tuned to this as fundamental harmonic of light 144. And as we'll see today, everything emerges from that very simple division of that oneness, or that spark of energy, or original spark of energy from source, in very simple ways, through the simplest geometric structure, also like the tetrahedron, for instance. And it's also that our physical reality, everything emerges through this spark of light energy, and is expressed in our physical world really through these three ingredients, or these three building blocks, that is harmonic 144, harmonic 432, that most people are very familiar with, and also the golden ratio principle. Now I need to specify here that the harmonic 432 itself is a function of harmonic 144, right? Because if you take harmonic 144 times 3, you get 432, right? So originally everything is from the harmonic 144, but physical world, really the expression, it expresses itself with these 3 building blocks, 144, 432, and the golden ratio principle, which, as we'll see in a short video, is really the golden ratio principle is responsible for all growth and fractality in our universe. That's the most efficient way, essentially, to create a division from the one, from the source. And also, one of the key principles here also is that the universe itself is entirely based on geometry. Everything is geometric. And I mean, if we look around us, everything has form and structure, right? It kind of makes sense as well. So it's not, very surprising. We also introduced what I call the light encoded reality matrix formula. So this dynamics between these 3 harmonics of creation, harmonic 144, golden ratio, and 432, is expressed through that very simple formula here. And mathematically, and that's what's fascinating, is that the product of these 3 harmonics equal to the number 1, right? Which represents the holographic universe, all that is in our universe. And I might add, also connects to the consciousness field. Really, that's what is connected to that. And as we'll see, Grant, in our part 2, which we're going to do in a few days, this connects also to the world of singularities and portals. And that's where things get even more quite interesting. So if you look at the right side of this equation here, again, these 3 ingredients, or these 3 harmonics, really is what is represented to our physical world. And as we'll see, we presented already in our last interview and also in the previous interview, we showed many connections between these harmonics and everything in the universe, right? Whether it's our planets and the stars and the size of the universe and things like that. So there's really, this is what connects it to what we actually can see, what we can perceive in our physical world. Bottom right here is the kind of high accuracy calculation here that matches that. So for those interested, of course, who are more into the math, they can always, what we'll do actually in some of these slides, I do have some mathematical details. We'll zap through these very quickly just for the record. So anyone can just take a screenshot and go back to these details. But I will not go too much into the details, the math details, just make sure that we can keep the audience with us. The other things that we showed, and then we'll show even more evidence of that today for these latest result of research that I've done over the last few months, is that the non-human intelligence really have communicated and encoded this information very precisely in various ways, whether it's through sightings that experiencer had, whether it's through ancient sacred sites like the Great Pyramid of Giza, which we did a detailed analysis last time, and we see the picture here on the bottom left side, which reveals again this very same harmonic 144, 432 golden ratio. And today I'm going to have a little special on the Rendlesham UFO enigma here, because the locations that are revealed, or the 7 locations, the coordinate set of coordinates that are revealed, mirrors that as well. And that was a big, to me, surprise, to be honest, Grant, and revelation, because when I completed this work really a few weeks ago, when I came up to the conclusion, I revisited the Rendlesham enigma, and I realized that kind of after the fact that what was encoded in these coordinates was matching the latest findings that I made. So I was really stunned by it, to a very high degree of accuracy. So we'll go through that in some level of details today.
Yeah, we should maybe give a background for people who are not familiar with the code. Was that Jim Peniston, one of the people at the site when this thing landed, touched the craft, these symbols on side the craft, and he got this binary code in his head. And it produced these, when they broke it down, it produced these 7 locations, which you're talking about here. So it does come from this bizarre incident that occurred in 1980 at Rendlesham Forest in England.
That's right. That's right. And this was decoded just decades later, these binary codes, and it's really amazing the information that comes out of it. And as always, I always encourage the folks out there to read the book that my good friend Gary Osborne co-authored, the Rendlesham Enigma. Gary has made also fantastic discoveries related to the fine structure constant and retrocausality of that as well. And there's a lot into it. So I always encourage the folks out there to look at Gary's work. And so we showed also, and I'm going to show this brief video again because it's very short, that also this information is encoded in sightings and experiences that even like just regular experiencers, we experience. I do have my own, experience as well, which has that information. And we presented last time, and I'm going to show this video again here, a video from my good friend Linda, who has had, is very connected, has had extraordinary sightings and experiences. And she was kind enough and generous enough to share her video with the world. And she had asked me actually just about a year ago, actually, it was in November of 2022, to look at this video and see if I could, find anything that was maybe buried in there. And I found essentially that this connected exactly to what I presented in the last interview, essentially these three building blocks of creation: harmonic 144, 432, and golden ratio. So if that's okay, Grant, I will just show this video. Just this very short video, but I think it's really worth showing it here. So let me just put it on the screen. So what you will see here, for those who have not seen it in the first interview, it's a sighting, an experience that Linda had on demand. She had made a specific request for aspect of the sighting to occur, but we'll see here these objects that all appeared really at the right moment when she was instructed essentially to start a video. And what we see are these objects performing various shapes and various artifact in the sky, and that's what really has actually information encoded in it. So let me just get it started. It's a 30 seconds video, and then we'll get back to the slides.
Thank Linda for that. That's my first wow tonight.
Yeah, and I think she will be a great person to interview, Grant. I mean, she's got a great story, and so what we saw here, just briefly, again, the folks can find the more detailed analysis of it, past interview. But what we saw here, that V formation here, that initial V formation, had an angle of exactly 144 degrees. The objects, if we compare both configuration, at some point they come more in a shrunk or compressed configuration, and then they stretch out, right? The difference between the stretch versus the compressed configuration reveals exactly the golden ratio in terms of measurements, and I did that measurement accurately. And finally, this last formation of a tetrahedron with an inscribed sphere inside is really one of the building blocks of the universe, and I will show that more actually in our part 2 here, how also this connects to black holes, singularities, and portals. I say portals here because it's widely theorized that singularities or black holes are actually portals, right, to other dimensions or the universe and so on. And actually, that we may ourselves be, what we call the Big Bang. We may just be on the other side of a black hole, that exists on the other side. But that shape, actually, the tetrahedron, resonates with harmonic 432. If we look at the sum of the angles of a tetrahedron and convert that into harmonic, that gives exactly harmonic 432. So these three building blocks of creation really are encoded in this just amazing sighting here. I had also my own, I've had several manifestations that contain information, but this one was probably one of the most significant one. I called it the golden ratio triangular craft. That craft manifested really at the end of my antennas 4 times over the last couple of years. at 3 different times, of course. And the last time that it occurred last year, and I think it was in April of 2022, this was on demand, so I had kind of figured that there was information contained in that, and I had figured, well, initially my friend David Sarita had noticed that there was a connection to the golden ratio, looking at initially at the craft, and when I did some more research into it, I found that actually there was a lot of information encoded. I will get back to it in a second, but if that's okay, I will share that video. It's also a pretty short video. Because it's going to get back also at the end of the presentation here. It's all comes together in terms of revelation here. So let me just get that video started, which is here. All right. So what we'll see here in a second is, so I made a transmission, asking for that craft to manifest. And since I had kind of figured out that there was golden ratio encoded in it and other things, it was part of the message. So what you will see is the actual message that's what broadcasted with my antenna system and radio station, which is capable of deploying about 250,000 watts on 432 megahertz and about 150,000 watts of effective isotropic radiated power on 144 megahertz. So here we go. Okay. So let's go back to the slides. So, and what I found really is that this craft encodes these very same building blocks of creation. If we take any side of this triangle and we divide it or ratio it by any other side of the same triangle, we always obtain either the golden ratio or the golden ratio squared at a high degree of accuracy. We see here the calculations. And also this angle to the left here is exactly 4.32 degrees. The angle to the right is the reciprocal of harmonic 144. And also the angle on top has connection to harmonic 432 and golden ratio squared. So just fascinating that this manifestation really encodes again the very same information. So this led really at the conclusion of the last interview to the presentation of these new physics formula, really, which covers a variety of aspects in our current physics, whether it's from the speed of light harmonic, the Planck length, to the Planck volume, creation of matter, and so on, of gravity, density of the universe, and so on. So we went through several of these in the last presentation, and this is really what it came out of that first presentation. So today we'll go a little bit further, and we'll explore further in going in the same direction. And so what I did, Grant, also, following our interview last year in January, in March, I encoded these formulas and I broadcasted them towards space with my radio station, just to see if that will trigger some kind of reaction. And so I have a short video that I'd like to present. So you've not seen that one. So let me take a second here.
When was this video taken?
March of 2023. So that was maybe a couple of months after we had the interview. So again, I kind of encoded these formulas and broadcasted them. So let me just show the video here. Okay.
How much after the transmission did that happen?
Yeah.
How many minutes was it?
I mean, we saw it actually. This was immediately after. There was
Okay.
a few seconds.
Oh, wow.
Oh, it's
Wow.
not the first. It's not the
That's
first.
significant.
Yeah, it's not the first time actually. I did one also recently. I had another experience a few days ago. I broadcasted again information. I often broadcast back the homework back to the universe, and often there's this type of reaction. So it's very interesting.
Yeah.
So why is all this important? Why should we even care about what the subject we're going to be talking today? Is that once we really understand how the universe operates, how things work, then we really can open the door and tap into free energy, and we saw how it was, it's even possible. Even telepathy. I mean, we saw how, for instance, the brain waves are connected to these harmonics. Healing technologies, anti-gravity, space travel, communication, and things like that. So it really opens the door to everything, right? Because it's really allows us to this knowledge allows us to free humanity from its current dependencies and limitations. Once really I can access how things work.
Yeah.
So the agenda today, so we'll continue to explore this exploration of the nature of reality using geometric harmonics. I will attempt to demonstrate that everything, again, in our universe emerges from the division of the unity, that number one we talked about, which in mathematics is represented by the number one. And mathematically, it all works out beautifully. And it's so simple, actually. Really, anyone with any high school, education, math education from high school is capable to understand everything we're going to go through today.
Yeah.
And this, also this universal process of division, fractalization of the unity, really occurs also through the simplest geometric structures that exist, and which really gives birth to also dimensionalities. And that's the beauty of it, is that it really appears as if creation is very simple in a sense, right? The way creation operates, it really works through the simplest principle, simplest geometric structure, and so on. And one of the key here, and one of the trick actually, what allows us to even have that perspective, that new perspective, is that we need to look at things, from a geometry standpoint. And what I mean by that is we need to make sure, and that's the key here, is that we use units, whether units of distance or time, that are compatible with geometry. And that's why we talk about geometric harmonics. We need and have to use units of distance and time that are compatible with geometry. Once we do that, then it completely opens up a new perspective on everything. And that's why it's called geometric harmonics. I always want to give credit to one of the pioneers in this field, Bruce Cathy, who really, I think, really was the number one pioneer to create some of the mathematics behind it and the principle. And so he's no longer on this planet, unfortunately, but he's done amazing work. So he's a great pioneer in the field. Yeah. I have a slide here, a couple of slides also before I keep going, because I talk about harmonics, and I think this might confuse people. Sometimes people don't exactly know what exactly that means. But really, a harmonic is just an exact multiple of a fundamental frequency. And I have a slide, the next slide will show an example of it. And also in harmonic mathematics, something really, really important is that we can ignore the orders of magnitude, right? Because we're looking at fractals. No matter how much we zoom in or out, we have a reflection always of the same pattern repeating. So we can ignore the zeros or the exponents. So I have an example at the bottom here. So if we look at the left, if we have 0.0432, for instance, that's in harmonic mathematics, that number is equivalent to 0.432. It's also equivalent to 4.32, to harmonic 432, right? So it's the same number. You can essentially, ignore the zeros here. So this is all the same harmonic, as we can see. And this is an example here, what we're talking about in terms of harmonic, right? So if we take, in our case, the fundamental harmonic of light, that spark of light, that energy that's foundational, primordial, if you would, at the source of everything, is 144. That's the number that is fundamental. So we call it in harmonics the fundamental. And if we multiply by 2, right, 2 times 144, we get 288. 288 is the first harmonic of the fundamental. It's really that simple. If we multiply the third multiply by 3, 144 times 3, we get harmonic 432. that everybody is pretty familiar with. And that is the second harmonic, right? And so we keep going, multiply by 4, we get 576, which is the third harmonic, multiply by 5, we get 722, which is the fourth harmonic, and it goes on this way. Interestingly, when we reach the ninth harmonic, right, so we have a multiple of 10, obviously 144 times 10, we get 1440, but since we can ignore the 0, we end up with the same fundamental again, this harmonic 144. And people are pretty familiar. I mean, people have heard about this famous number 9, right? That, you know, when you add numbers for digital compression, you can get to number 9. So that's really 9 is the meaning of 9 really is means completion, right? That's the completion of a cycle. So we see it being reflected in, essentially here, that after once we reach the ninth harmonic, we get back to the, you know, equivalent of the fundamental. So that's all that is really. So that's why we're talking about here harmonic 144, 432, right? These are just harmonics of the fundamental 144. The other thing also, and then lastly here, just before we keep going, there are, for the people to be able to follow what we're going to be talking about, and especially for those who are interested in some of the mathematics of it, there are some very 4 basic rules to follow, you know, when we do geometric harmonics. As I said earlier, the first one is to ensure we use unit of distance that are compatible with geometry. So in our case, we're always going to be using the nautical miles. And this was developed by Bruce Cathy, which I talked about earlier. So the nautical mile is the unit of distance that we're going to use that really gives us this new perspective on everything. The rule number 2 here is that in terms of time, we know that our time is based on, you know, 24 hours a day, right? There's, you know, 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, and there are 24 hours a day. But the geometric time, the unit of time that's actually compatible or in sync with geometry is based on number 27, not 24. So all we do really essentially is to apply a very simple conversion factor, right, when we're dealing with unit of time through all the stuff that we're going to go through. And we just apply this conversion factor, 27 over 24, to essentially, you know, create this time unit that's compatible with geometry, which again gives us this perspective, this new perspective on everything of physics. That was developed by Bruce Cathy also, this to apply this conversion factor. So I came up with a more accurate version here because there's actually not exactly 24 hours a day, right? It's 23.9344, blah, blah, blah. So, right, I made this number a bit more accurate. And I also presented in our last interview that, you know, through the squaring the circle solution, the double square root of the golden ratio, we're getting actually a more accurate conversion of time. So these, for those interested in the math, you can use this conversion factor when you do that conversion of time. Finally, as we said earlier, as I explained, in harmonic mathematics, we can ignore the zeros or the exponents. So this is what's expressed here at rule number 3. And finally, the rule number 4 is that in geometric harmonics, a geometric volume, because the space that we perceive as being empty is actually not empty, right? The space is full of energy, and that's what often people refer to the 0-point energy, or you can tap into this, you know, infinite amount of energy, the 0-point energy. And so when we have a volume, you know, in a geometric volume, well, that volume is full of energy, right? And so if we express that volume in terms of geometric harmonics, then the energy corresponding to that will also be expressed in terms of geometric harmonics. So essentially, volume equal energy in our case. So these 4 basic rules, that's all we need really for those who are interested to go dig deeper in the mathematics of it. And here's an example, right? If we take the speed of light that people know about, and it's very known in science, of course. If we look on the upper left here, this is the speed of light represented in the metric system, 299,792.458 kilometer per second. That's the known value in science, recognized in a metric unit. On the right side, it's expressed in miles per second instead of kilometer per second. But once we convert, the speed of light into geometric harmonics units, which again, we use the nautical miles per geometric second, well, we end up with this high accuracy speed of light that's calculated, 143,526.736. So that is the actual high accuracy speed of light harmonic expressed in geometric harmonic term, which you round it up, essentially, again, you see that the speed of light is perfectly tuned to harmonic 144 again, right? 143.5, it's at 99.7%. So
Wow.
this is a representative, and this is very powerful. This is the proof, really, that what we're talking about here, that when we convert these factors, these units that we see in science, when we convert that into the proper geometric harmonic units in nautical miles per geometric second, we see this new reality that everything is tuned to this harmonic 144, and that's what's revealed here. And in our case, in the formulas that we're showing throughout that presentation, that harmonic 144 is represented by this letter C. Just like Einstein, used the letter C for the speed of light, right? E equal mc squared, right? It's the same representation. Letter C here is the speed of light harmonic. In this case, the speed of light harmonic 144. All right. So this is the brief recap on the past and some of the rules. So we'll move forward into the new material here of the presentation. And as I discussed earlier, and this is really recent material, Grant, because I had a lot of this realization, and everything came up together in the July-August time frame that just passed, and everything connected. So I was able really to come up with more unified theory, if you will, and get to the root as to why things are the way they are, right? And not only the connection to this harmonic, but why, for instance, the physics constants that we know of, or the mathematical constant, and many of how things works, really, where that origin, what's the origin? And that's really the essence of this title, the genesis of creation, which means the origin of creation. And whether the folks out there want to, people have their own belief, of course, some may relate this to the source, the creator, the oneness, all that is. Some may be more scientifically based, will refer or look at it more from a Big Bang theory standpoint, where this singularity just essentially expanded, when created the universe we live in. So regardless of the, where we're coming from, really the results we're going to see here are the same. Okay, so we'll go through these five basic formulas here. Really, once we have gone through it, really will allow us to recreate the entire reality we live in, from the quantum space to the material world we live in, to essentially the universe. The first principle we're going to cover is the golden ratio principle, and what I will refer as the primordial fractalization, right? And as we see here, and I'm going to present that short video about the golden ratio in a second, because it's really fundamental for the rest of the presentation, right? If we take this number one here, again, which represent all that is, right, this singularity, this source of creation, the most logical way to create a division, right, to create a division that will essentially create the rest of the universe we live in, is to divide it through the golden ratio principle, right, which we found everywhere in nature. That's really the logical thing to do. And once we do that, and that's what I'm going to present here, that explains a lot of things that we see around us. And I have a very concrete example about it. The golden ratio is, again, is at the foundation of pretty much everything in nature, through the proportion of our body, through how the galaxy evolves, and how they're constructed, through the Nautilus shelf, how plants grow, and so on. So I'm going to present a short video. That's a 3 minutes video, because that gives a very good example of where the golden ratio, where it's involved, and the importance of it. And people will better understand the rest of the presentation. So let me show that video. That's okay?
Yes, go ahead.
All right.
All right, so this ratio, 1 to 1.6, and this is the ratio that's called the golden ratio, a 1 to 1.6 ratio. Growing and expanding to the rate of the golden ratio spiral allows the maximum amount of rain to be directed down to the roots of many plants. And remarkably, when you study nature, you see the golden Fibonacci numbers like 3, 5, 8, 13, all of that again and again in the seed pattern spirals of plants, as well as in the number of petals. Next time you're bored and have a sunflower, try counting the number of seeds in the sunflower spiral, the golden ratio. Or maybe try something else with a spiral, like a pine cone or pineapple. So we could spend all day counting the seeds of flowers and plants and fruit. I mean, you get the idea. But we don't just see this golden ratio sequence on a small scale. This ratio is the mathematical sequence in the spirals of our storms, tornadoes, hurricanes. These all spin in this golden sequence, 1 to 1.6. Even the waves can be measured using this ratio. But it doesn't stop there. Modern technology continues to be mystified by the far-reaching scope of the golden ratio, from the alignment of the planets to the spirals of our Milky Way galaxy, as well as the spirals of other ratios in planets. Now let's take this closer to home. I want you to hold out your arm and look at the distance between your shoulder and your elbow, and then from your elbow to your fingertips. Notice how your elbow, from your shoulder to your elbow is 1, and then from your elbow to your fingertips is 1.6. Pretty crazy, huh? But it doesn't stop there. Now take that further. The distance from your fingertips to your wrist is 1, and from your wrist to your elbow is 1.6. Keep it going. From the furthest tip of your finger to the bottom of your fingers is 1, and from the bottom of your fingers to your wrist is 1.6. Now check out the spacing of your knuckles, 1 to 1.6. Are you getting freaked out yet? Think about this. The head to your belly button, 1, and then belly button to your feet, 1.6. From your toes to your knees, and from your knees to your hips, golden ratio. Ever wonder why your 2 front teeth are so much bigger? Golden ratio. The pupils of your eyes, I mean, you name it, your whole body is the symphony of the golden ratio. In fact, as you are listening to this video, the sound waves are passing through your ear in a perfect golden spiral. Scientists have discovered that the golden ratio pattern is necessary for the human brain, the neural system, our sense organs, and our lung system. The golden ratio sequence is even in the helix of our DNA, and it forms the very rhythm of our heartbeat pattern.
All right, so pretty powerful stuff. I think it's a good visual. I think you're on mute, Grant.
Yeah, that is pretty powerful stuff. Wow.
So let me get back to the presentation. So yeah, so I mean, what we see here really is that the golden ratio principle really is the expression of creation, right? I mean, it's all over our body. This is how we've made, and we see it across the nature. So, all right, so now we get into the new material, Grant. So I discovered that the golden ratio itself, this principle of nature, is in fact just the product or the division, the result of the division of that unity here, that number 1 over the product of harmonic 144 and harmonic 432. It's that simple, and it's quite remarkable. So again, we're playing again here with the same building blocks of creation, right? Harmonic 144, 432. Essentially, the golden ratio, it can be represented by that. And what we see here to the right side is the simplified version, because as I described earlier, harmonic 432 is 3 times 144, right? So everything again can be reduced to this fundamental harmonic of light, this spark of light energy, harmonic 144, and that's what this expression is. So this is the simplified expression which represents the golden ratio. This slide here is, I won't go in detail, but again, this is one of these detailed slides that I just want to zap and show on the screen for a few seconds. For those interested in doing the math, they can go a bit deeper on it. But what we see here is really if we use the high accuracy speed of light harmonic in this version here, we have a match of 99.994% match between the golden ratio and this expression, right? This harmonic 144 times harmonic 432. So I call it really, again, it kind of makes sense that, if we take all that is, you know, the source, the creation, source creation, and we create a division using the golden ratio principle, which is the most logical thing to do, really we see and we can explain great things in nature. And when we talk about fractal, you know, I often talk about that, right? In this case, it's called fractal, primordial fractalization. Really, a fractal is just really a pattern that repeats forever. So no matter how much we zoom in or out, right, that pattern just comes back, right? It repeats itself. And I have a short video here, and I think that's my last video. It's just 1 minute, and it shows what the fractal is, right? This is the Mandelbrot fractal sequence. It's a very known sequence that it's a computer simulation, you know, using algorithms, you know, from a mathematical formula that expresses fractals, really, as if I could put it in simple way. And so this video will show what when we're talking about fractals. So let me just play this. It's just 1 minute. That's okay.
Yep.
All right. The Mandelbrot fractal zoom. Here we go. Okay. All right. So let's get back to the slide. So where are we seeing this fractal primordial? I think you're on mute, Grant. Yeah. So where are we seeing this primordial fractalization? So the Milky Way itself, if we go on a NASA website and you look for you know, this article, you know, how much the Milky Way weigh, right? So there's been a very good estimates that were made recently. I think that study date from 2019, if I recall, the original article. So I just took a couple of screenshots again, but you can see on the NASA.gov website, and they estimated that the Milky Way galaxy, essentially, which is the galaxy in which our own sun is, where it's located. We live in the Milky Way galaxy. So that Milky Way galaxy weighs about the equivalent of 1.5 trillion solar masses, meaning 1.5 trillion times the mass of our sun, right? That's what's the best estimate out there of the weight of our galaxy. Now, since we have the mass, the estimated mass, simply using the general relativity formula of Einstein, E equal mc squared, right? We know that this formula is to convert mass into energy, or vice versa, convert energy into mass, right? That's what the E means here, means energy. The M stands for mass, and the C is the speed of light harmonic squared, right? And in our case, we're going to be using the speed of light 144, right? This is the geometric harmonic speed of light. So again, this study here says that NASA says that the Milky Way weighs 1.5 trillion times the mass of our sun. Well, when we convert that mass into energy, we get exactly 1 over a golden ratio, right? And that's the math that we're seeing here. The math is exact, and it shows again this expression of this fractalization, this division of that unity, that number 1, even through the mass of our Milky Way, in terms of energy, is expressed that way, right? And I can just do a quick example here to show it, right? So, 1.5 trillion mass of our sun. The sun weighs 1.98 by 10 to the power of 30 kilograms. So that gives this number here, 2.98275505. We're just going to ignore here the exponents. So just focus on the harmonic side. So if we take the 2.98, I'm going to do it on the screen, 2705, right? That's the mass of the Milky Way galaxy we live in. That's the m in the equation, and we multiply that by the speed of light harmonic squared, the c equal 144, as I said. So we do times 144 squared, we get 61849. So essentially, and that's what we see here, right? If we round it, we get 6185. So and the 1 over the golden ratio, the number is 0.6180. Right, that's the reciprocal of the golden ratio, 0.6180, and we get 0.6185. So there's 99.93% match, again, which demonstrates that mathematically the energy contained in our own galaxy, the Milky Way, is exactly represented by 1 over golden ratio.
Okay.
Now we went from very big, obviously the Milky Way is huge, right? 1.5 trillion times of our sun. Now let's go to the atomic level now, right? So if we take, so one thing that I did, so I looked at the water molecule as a chemist, so I was easily able to calculate the mass of a water molecule. And if we calculate the mass, again, and using the E equal mc squared and calculate the energy, when we convert that mass into pure energy, what that represents, what are we getting? We're getting exactly, again, 1 over golden ratio.
Wow.
And here's the mathematical demonstration of it. I won't go through that in detail, but this is just to show again that the match is 99.7%. So again, we see here water is obviously the source of life, right? So we see how intricate, this very principle of the division of the unity through the golden ratio principle, where how important it is in our body. We're made of 65% of water. Our brain is made of 80% of water, right? So that's these harmonics, and this principle is really all over us. And as we saw in the video earlier, even the proportion of our bones, our body, our members, our teeth, everything is connected to that.
Yeah.
Now, where else have we seen this? Well, as I described earlier, now if we take this energy, this 1 over golden ratio, this basic division of the unity, and we insert or fill that energy within a tetrahedron. And a tetrahedron, just to be clear, is the simplest geometric structure, or simplest three-dimensional geometric structure that exists in the universe, right? So again, creation operates through the simplest principle, the most elegant principle. And so that's the trail that I followed when I came to that realization. And what I saw was just, what blew my mind. So when we do that, and again, we insert that energy in the tetrahedron, we get this harmonic. Naturally, harmonic 432 emerges naturally from the primordial fractalization, as I said, of that division of the number 1 through the tetrahedron structure. That's where the number 432 comes from. And I will argue, and I'm pretty convinced of that is why we see this harmonic all over the place in our universe, is that naturally it is the result of the primordial fractalization through the tetrahedric structure, which is the most fundamental structure in the universe that we see in atoms, in molecules, in crystals, and so on. Now, are there signs, right? Has the non-human intelligence left signs behind to give us a trail to follow? Well, if we look here, the Great Pyramid of Giza, where it is actually located in Egypt, in Cairo, the distance between the prime meridian, which is longitude 0, right? The distance between the longitude 0, the prime meridian, and the longitude of the Great Pyramid of Giza is exactly 1,868 nautical miles. We see it here on the figure. 1,868 matches exactly to the dot the harmonic that we're getting when we exercise this primordial fractalization of the unity through the golden ratio principle into a tetrahedron. That is naturally the harmonic that is created, and that's exactly reflected in the location, the physical location, the longitude location where the Great Pyramid of Giza is built. Additionally, when we look at the distance between the Great Pyramid of Giza, which is one of the 7 coordinates of the Rendlesham, one of the 7 coordinates, the Great Pyramid, that is, when we calculate the distance, again, in nautical miles, right? As I said earlier, we're always going to use a nautical mile system here because this is a geometric harmonics. The distance between the Great Pyramid of Giza and where the UFO landed in Rendlesham Forest, we get exactly 1,864 nautical miles, which is really, really, really close to that 1,868 here. We're talking about a fraction of a percent. So the match is pretty stunning. And finally, even the hypotenuse of the Great Pyramid, if we look on the upper right side here, the hypotenuse of the Great Pyramid of Giza is 186.6 meter, which matches again this harmonic.
Yep.
See, so it's really all over the place, right? And what's interesting too is that when we take the harmonic 432 squared, we get 1,866 again. This is the same harmonic that comes again. You see?
Wow.
And 432 squared is the speed of light in miles per second, by the way. So, right? It's just really all connected.
Wow. Amazing.
All right, so let's go to item number 2 here. Now that we've talked about one of the fundamental principle of division and fractalization, that was the golden ratio, now we'll get into how the quantum space up to the physical reality, the material world we live in, how it's been created, following this very basic principle, which are very, very simple. So I have a short video here. That is my last video about the Planck length, right? Because we're going to be talking about that quite extensively, because really the Planck length is the smallest oscillation of energy that can exist at the quantum space. That's really the fundamental pixel of energy that exists, that is at the foundation of everything. So, and that has been encoded again everywhere in many ancient sacred sites in Egypt. I will show later. So I'd like to show this short video here just for the audience to understand what the Planck length is, and then we'll get back to the slide if that's okay.
Ready to rock and roll.
Perfect. All right. So let me get started with the video. Here we go. So here's the Planck length.
Scientists have already discovered the pixel-sized building block of our universe, which is known as the Planck length. The smallest possible size for anything in our universe. It is at this point whereby the rules of gravity and space-time are no longer applicable. In our matrix simulation, this Planck length can be considered as one single pixel, as it is the tiniest amount which can be quantified. In the 1890s, Max Planck, the renowned physicist, suggested a set of units to streamline the representation of physics laws by applying the 5 constants in nature, such as the speed of light, the gravitational constant, and Planck constant. Quarks and leptons are the building blocks of matter and incredibly tiny, less than a billionth of a meter in diameter. If zooming further, a billion times more, beyond zeptometers and yoctometers, 100 million times smaller still, and eventually reaching the end will be the Planck length. Nothing beyond this point will be visible, as everything is energy, and nothing is physical. The scale of a Planck length, which is represented by 1.6 by 10 to the power of 35 meters, is the smallest thing that can be measured in our world, and for comparison purposes it is 100 million trillion times smaller than a proton. The Planck scale was devised as a set of universal units, but also represent the boundaries of the known laws of physics. Any space smaller than the Planck length does not work, as the physics completely break down. At the Planck scale, physicists theorize the 4 fundamental forces: gravity, the weak force, electromagnetism, and the strong force unite into a single force of energy. Thank you for watching, and do not forget to like and subscribe.
All right, so as we can see here, the Planck length is really foundational. And So the question is, where is this coming from, right? And so when I kind of figured out this basic principle that everything emerged through the simple division of the unity, naturally I thought, okay, if we take a circle, if we go to the left side here, if we take a circle, again, a circle has 360 degrees, right? It's very well known in geometry, 360 degrees in a circle. So if we establish that the diameter of that circle is equal to the unity, that famous number 1 we've been talking about from the beginning, what will be the length of each degree in order to obtain a circle that has diameter of 1? Right? That is what came to my mind, and I tried to resolve. So simply to get that answer, all we need to do in terms of mathematics is simply we take the pi constant and we divide it by 360 degrees in a circle, and that gives us that diameter of 1, right, that we're looking for. And when we do that, I was absolutely stunned. I was not expecting that results, but it worked out perfectly. When we do that, we obtain exactly the Planck length.
Wow.
So essentially, this fundamental pixel of energy, the smallest oscillation of energy that can exist at the quantum scale, is the result of the division of the unity through that 360 degree circle. It's really that simple as geometry. And that's not known, Grant. This is really something that just has never been looked at. And it's very simple. So let me show you on the screen. We'll do it because, again, it's so simple. So if we look at the bottom left here, the Planck length in terms of expressed in nautical miles, right, in terms of distance. The Planck length is a distance, is a length. So it's 8.72708. I'm omitting the exponents here for simplicity, but that's the figure that matters here. We're going to focus on. So when we do this division of the, if we take again this pi constant, right, it's 3.14159, and we divide it by 360 degrees in a circle, as just said, we do it on the screen, we get 872,665 when we round it. That's exactly what's shown here, 8.72665. If we look at the match with the quantum, the physics, the known quantum, the Planck length that's acknowledged by physics, we're looking at well over 99.99% match with it, with the value. So the match is stunning. And I will argue that, you know, the difference between the two is if it falls in the margin of error. You know, if you look on the National Institute of Standard and Technology, where these physics contents are located, there's always a margin of error. So I will argue that this value may be actually the real value, the most accurate one. And in terms of representation, when we simplify this expression into golden ratio or harmonic 144, we can essentially simplify this expression, and it becomes it can be expressed by the golden ratio squared over 3, and we get this figure here, which again matches very nicely the Planck length.
You there, Jimmy?
Yeah, we're good.
Sorry, I got an electrical problem here. I haven't figured it out.
No worry.
I got an electrical problem in the house. I'm not sure what to do, but as soon as we finish this, I'll try to solve what's going on here.
Okay. All right. Okay. So yeah, right. So we just demonstrated here how we could obtain the Planck length using this just basic principle I talked about, and this can be simplified with this expression here. Because, let me give that to the next slide. Because everything in our holographic universe has a representation in terms of these harmonic 144, 432 golden ratio. So even what we saw here, the pi constant and 360 degrees, they have a representation in terms of harmonic 144 and 432 and golden ratio. Pi is nothing else than the golden ratio square times the square root of harmonic 144. And the number of degrees in a circle, 360, can be represented by 432 divided by harmonic square root of harmonic 144. I'm going to do it on the screen just to show it, that I'm not making this up. So if we look at the number of degrees in a circle, we take harmonic 432, and we divide by harmonic 144 square root, and we get 360 degrees in a circle, right? Yeah. It just shows again. So when we simplify that, we can simplify this expression in terms of golden ratio, and that's the expression here that comes out of it. Where else have we seen this? Well, interestingly, I found out that even the Royal Egyptian cubit, right, which is the fundamental measurement system that was used in Egypt to build the pyramid in these ancient sacred sites, is actually a function of the Planck length. So once we express the Royal Egyptian cubit in terms of nautical miles, right, geometric harmonics, we get this figure, 2.827. And 2.827 matches 2 times the Planck length times 1 golden ratio. That's the expression here. You see how the match is 99.9%. So even the Royal Egyptian cubit, this fundamental unit of measurement that was used at the time when these constructions were built by whatever intelligence, that encoded quantum physics, the foundational elements of quantum physics. So it's not an accident. And we'll see in part 2 how this connects to black holes and singularities also. So there's really a deep connection to this. And the Planck wavelength, right? We see the Planck length, but when we look at it from the Planck being a wavelength, right? This smallest length of oscillation of energy in terms of wavelength, we also realize that the energy of that wavelength matches the Royal Egyptian cubit at a very high degree of accuracy, actually 99.97% of accuracy. So again, the Royal Egyptian cubit in Egypt was built based on quantum physics, was developed that way, which is stunning in itself.
Wow.
Now, have there been other signs from non-human intelligence? Well, I had my own sighting back in July 2018 here. If we look at this, these 4 objects that just manifested briefly right in front of the antenna system, so I circled them. It's quite interesting that if we look at the shape of these 4 objects, this matches the shape of the symbol of the wavelength here.
Mm-hmm.
So that seems to have been a sign, or communication related to that, clearly. Pay attention to that. Why else have we seen this? Well, even through the angle of the Great Pyramid itself. So it's well known the angle of the Great Pyramid of Giza is 51.84 degrees. Okay, so again, if we follow the same principle here that I found out recently, it came naturally that I said, okay, let's see if there's a connection between the Great Pyramid of this oneness, right? This number 1 that represents all that is, of that source, if you will, creation. So we take the angle of the Great Pyramid and we multiply that. Again, as we saw earlier, we just demonstrated that each degree of a circle, right, to produce a circle that has a diameter of 1, has to have a length. Each degree has the length of 1 Planck length, right? The fundamental unit in quantum physics. So when we apply that to the angle of the Great Pyramid of Giza, we take 51.84 degrees. We know that each degree is equal to 1 Planck length, right? And we get this result here, 452.39, blah, 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 right? And that number, once we round it, we get 452.4. That's the number in yellow here, once it's rounded. So that's essentially the length of this arc here, right? Produced by the angle of the Great Pyramid of Giza. When we plug this arc length in a calculator, in a circle calculator, and we see here it's a circle in red, it renders exactly a diameter of 1, right? So essentially, the Great Pyramid of Giza, through this angle of the Great Pyramid of Giza, is an expression of this number 1 again. There's this division of the number 1. Now, where else have we seen this? Let's look at Rendlesham. Right, so we talked about Rendlesham and these 7 coordinates that were communicated by this extraterrestrial craft. We see one coordinate was High Brazil, correspond to High Brazil on the west coast of Ireland. One of the coordinates was Sedona, very close to where I live. One of them was Cana Pyramid in Belize, Central America. One of the coordinates was Nazca, Peru, South America. One of the coordinates was obviously the Great Pyramid of Giza, which is not surprising. And another coordinate was the Temple of Apollo in Greece. And finally, the last coordinate was Mount Taishan located in China. So these were the 7 coordinates. And what we see here in the middle is where actually the UFO landed in Rendlesham Forest, which is the center of all that. So let me show something here. So what I did here in that analysis, I calculated the distance in terms of geometric harmonic distance, again, which is expressed in nautical miles instead of not using the miles or the kilometers. We're using the nautical mile system, which is used by NASA, by the way. NASA, when they talk to their, the astronauts in space, they express their distance in nautical miles. So I wonder if there's a connection there. Probably there is. So when we calculate the distance between where the UFO landed in Rendlesham and these 7 coordinates, that's what's expressed here with these numbers that I highlighted in yellow and red, okay? Now, let's go back to this one. Now, if we look at the arc length that I just described, 4524, this harmonic, 4524, happens to match exactly to the dot the distance between the Rendlesham Forest and one of the coordinates, that is Mount Taishan in China, 4,524 nautical miles to the dot.
Wow.
I mean, hard to believe this is just an accident. Yeah. I mean, it's so precise.
That's right. Yeah.
So precise. And again, this number is a reflection of the arc length of the Great Pyramid of Giza expressed for its angle, 51.84 degrees, which renders a circle of diameter of 1. You see, so they are, again, pointing the finger in that direction, again, like focus on this, right? Focus on this division of the number 1 through this geometric harmonic principle. And this distance, by the way, for those who wants to verify my calculation, if we look on the upper left side here, I had the small calculator, which is used by the National Oceanic and the NOAA, this agency in the US. So this is a calculator. You just punch in the coordinates, latitude and longitude, and it calculates your distance. And that we see here, the distance was exactly 4,524 nautical miles. So again, I'm not making this distance up. It's calculated high, sophisticated software.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on now. Now that we've established where the Planck length, the fundamental pixel of energy at the quantum space origin, we're going to create dimensions from there, right? So if we look at the Planck length as a 2-dimensional systems, within a circle here, right? Yeah. So if we create a sphere now, which is 3-dimensional, right? So we go up in 1 dimension, we create a dimension, but that sphere, again, must have the Planck length in terms of diameter, right? So if we want to represent the smallest sphere of energy that can exist at the quantum scale, like that pixel of energy, the smallest pixel of energy in the 3D world we live in, right? That's logically what we will kind of conceptualize. And that's what I did by creating this sphere with this diameter equivalent to the Planck length. So I calculated the volume energy of that sphere. I got that figure 347.97. which in terms of harmonic 144 can be represented by 1 over 2c. I'm going to show that in a second. And 1 over 2c, when we do that, let me show it on the screen. If we take 2 times the speed of light harmonic 144, because c equal 144, right? So 2c equal 2 times 144, we get 288. We do 1 over x. In the formula, we get 347.2. That is what's in that sphere here. So amazingly, Grant, that number, that energy happens to match exactly the energy or the average energy of the subatomic particles that creates our material world.
Wow.
So this kind of logic or this path that we just followed, right, just logically of using the Planck length, we create a smaller sphere of energy using the Planck length as the diameter of that sphere. We calculate the volume energy, we end up with this figure of 347.2. And again, that happens to match the energy of the subatomic particles that creates our material world. I'm going to get a bit more depth into that in a second here. And that's the representation here. So that energy is, 1 over 2 times the speed of light harmonic 144, creates all the protons and neutrons that are in the atoms that, makes up our material world. Now, where have we seen this? Let's go back to Rendlesham again. And as I said, when I found this out, Grant, I went back to Rendlesham after the fact, and I saw that this figure was just fitting so well with just how that put together that I was really, really stunned by it. So if we look at it here, one of the coordinates, as I mentioned earlier, was the high Brazil, which is located at 537 nautical miles from the UFO landing site in Rendlesham. And the Great Pyramid of Giza, which is another coordinate, 1,864 nautical miles from the UFO landing site. When we ratio these two figures together, we get 347.1, which matches perfectly that figure we just looked at, 347.2, which is the energy of the subatomic particles making up our material world.
Wow.
Let me do it on the screen so I can show that I'm not making this up. So let's say 1,864, which is the distance between Rendlesham and the Great Pyramid. And we ratio that, we divide that by 537, which is the distance from the Rendlesham to High Brazil. And we get 347.1, which is the figure that I just showed here. So I just wanted to demonstrate it.
Yeah.
And so this is a very powerful. So the match is 99.98% here of accuracy. Here's another one, which is also related to Rendlesham, which I really discovered very, very recently. So two of the coordinates, one of the coordinates, as I said, is Sedona, not far from where I live, which has a distance of 4,529 nautical miles between Sedona and Rendlesham Forest. And the other coordinate is Mount Taishan in China, which is at a distance of 4,524 nautical miles from the Rendlesham Forest landing site. Interestingly, we see these two figures are very similar, right? 4,529, 4,524. And for a long time, I wondered why they were so close, but they were not identical. And I started doubting. I said, maybe the software I'm using to calculate this distance, there's some inaccuracy. And because it's quite remarkable that these two coordinates are very like a mirror image from each other, right? If we look at it, it's like a mirror reflection on one side to the other. But I recently found out that that difference between the two was not an accident. It was on purpose. The intelligence did it on purpose. So when we calculate the difference between these two distance, 4,529 minus 4,524, we get a difference of only 5 nautical miles, right?
Yeah.
And when we ratio that difference over the speed of light harmonic 144, we get exactly 347.2.
Yeah.
which is again this Planck sphere volume that we've been talking about. And let me do it on the screen here. So I take 5, the difference between the two, we divide that by harmonic 144, we get 347.2 to the dot, 100% accuracy. And this was not an accident. And again, they were pointing the finger here at the energy of the subatomic particles that makes up our physical world. And we'll see how this all ties in together. Now that we've talked about the quantum space, right? We talked about the Planck length. And from the Planck length, we created the Planck sphere, which is a 3-dimensional structure, right? It's a 3-dimensional space. So that's the creation of the quantum space we just did. This was done through this formula, 1/2c. We just demonstrated it. Now let's move up to the creation actually of the matter, the material world we live in. So what's the material world we live in? So for those who may be less inclined with chemistry or physics, very simply, everything that exists in the material world, the physicality, the material world we live in, all the atoms are made of primarily 3 ingredients. And I will say two that are more the mass, right? So everything is made of neutrons and protons and electrons. The neutrons and protons have very similar mass, and they make up well beyond 99.9% of the mass of the atoms we live in. So the mass of the universe, really, the mass of the material we live in, the energy comes from the neutron and the proton. The electron is much smaller, like it's 1,836 times smaller than the proton. So in terms of mass, it's very small, but it's very important because it's a charged particle, right? So the proton and the electron, they are charged. The proton is like a plus, right? It's charged positively like a small magnet. and the electron it's charged negatively, like a magnet that is the opposite pole, if you will. And this game, if you will, between this charge is what makes up chemistry. Everything in our chemistry is based on this, this charge. But at the atomic level, really, what makes up the atoms in terms of mass is primarily dominated by the neutrons and protons. And if we look, for instance, and it's very simple, everything is made up of these are the building blocks. The same ingredients makes up the entire periodic table of the elements. That makes up all of chemistry or physicality or all the metals we know, everything. So if we take the atom of carbon, for instance, the atom of carbon, which is responsible for all the life, right? The life is it's carbon-based life we have on Earth, right? It's made that atom of carbon is made of 6 protons, 6 electrons, and 6 neutrons. There's always an equivalent number of protons and electrons. They are charged particles. And sometimes the neutron may vary, but in this case, we got 666. If we look at the atom of helium, right, what we blow in balloons, right, this gas, this stable gas, it's 2 protons, 2 electrons, 2 neutrons. Very simply. The hydrogen, which makes up most of the universe, right, outside our planets, what's in space, actually, these gas giants and all these, the nebula and so on that's in space is made of hydrogen. Really, that's the most common element in the universe is the hydrogen. It's made of simply 1 proton and 1 electron, right? So everything is based on that, essentially. And that's what the intelligence is pointing the finger at here. And so what we'll demonstrate here using, again, very simply the general relativity formula of Einstein, equal mc squared, right, which shows an equivalent between energy and mass. And the connecting factor is the speed of light harmonic squared, the c squared in our case, which is harmonic 144. So what we're going to do here is to calculate the mass of this energy that we just talked about, this 347.2, which I said is the energy, right, corresponding to the subatomic particles. So we're going to calculate the mass equivalent of that energy. That's what we're going to demonstrate here. So to do that, we again rearrange this equation of Einstein equal mc squared. So to obtain the mass, we simply take the energy and we divide by the speed of light harmonic c squared. That's a very simple thing to do, right? So if we go here and we insert this figure that we created and demonstrated where it was coming from, this 307.2, this Planck sphere, energy, as the energy, and we plug that, we insert that into the this formula as being the E, right, equal 347.2. The c squared, the speed of light harmonic 144 squared. When we do that, and I'm going to do it on the screen, again, to show that I'm not making this up. So we take 347.2, and we divide by speed of light harmonic 144 squared. We get 1.6745 if we round it. 1.6745. This is what I wrote on the screen here. 1.6745. This figure's Grant happens to match exactly the average mass of the subatomic particles we just talked about, the proton, neutrons, and electrons.
Wow.
That average is 1.6743. So there's a 99.99% match.
Wow.
So essentially what we just demonstrated here is how matter is created, where it is coming from, why it is the way that it is. We just demonstrated it in a very, very simple form. And that information, again, was encoded, clearly in Rendlesham. We just saw it, and it's also encoded in many other places. The simplified formula for it, the creation of the material world, can be simplified by 1/2c cubed. I mean, that's what gives us the mass of all the subatomic particles, or the average mass of subatomic particles that makes up the periodic table of elements that creates all the atoms and really molecules that makes up our physicality, or physical world.
Wow.
So this is what we just went over here, right? All right, so let's move up now. We went from the quantum scale, which is the smallest scale that exists, really, to the material world, which is more at our scale, kind of macro, and now we're going to move up to the universe, the size of the universe. So we can cover the entire spectrum from infinitely small to infinitely big, if you will. If you go on Wikipedia, anyone can go on Wikipedia today, and you will find, if you type in the observable universe, you will find the best estimated mass of the observable universe is 1.5 by 10 to the power of 53 kilograms. That's what's stated as the best estimate. Now, if we convert that mass, 1.5 by 10 to the power of 53, we convert that into energy, using, again, the general relativity equation, equal mc squared, we get 1/2 times the golden ratio, which is amazing. Again, it shows, again, we're coming back again to this basic principle that, you know, everything that exists, even the size of our universe, or I should say the mass of our universe, is based on the division of that unity, that number 1/2 golden ratio principle. Right? We're always coming back to this basic principle. We went from the quantum scale to the macro level we live in, the physicality. Now we're up to the universe, and the very same principle apply across the board. This is the detailed calculation of it. I won't go into it in detail here, but this is the mathematical demonstration. The match is perfect.
Wow.
And now let's talk about the volume of the universe now. Right? So again, if we go on Wikipedia today, on the same web page, actually, you will find that the best estimated volume of our current universe, observable universe, is 3.566 to the power of 80 cubic meter. Now, as I said earlier at the beginning, right, we need to use the nautical mile unit to work with geometric harmonics. So if you look at the bottom left here, I took a screenshot of the converter to convert the cubic meter into cubic nautical miles. Okay, so very simple. So what we get, the figure we get here is 5.614, right? If we round it, this is what's expressed in this little thing here. So that figure is the expression of the volume of the universe expressed in nautical miles, in cubic nautical miles, geometric harmonics. And this actually can be simplified simply when we convert that into energy, because as I said at the beginning, right, the volume equal energy. Space is not empty. Space is full of energy. So that volume is equivalent to the golden ratio over 2 times the speed of light harmonic over 2c. So let me do it on the screen. So if we take the golden ratio, sorry, this is 1.618, right? We saw in the video this famous factor, the lady was showing 1 to 1.6. So we do 1.618. I'm going to add some digit here. Okay, and then I'm going to divide by 2 times 144. We get 561.8, right? So 561.8, and we go back. If you see at the bottom what we're getting, or the circle 561.4. I mean, the match is just
amazing. Amazing.
Right? Again, we're using the same building blocks of creation. Now, amazingly, Grant, and this part really blew my mind when I discovered that. You know, we saw earlier, we went from the subatomic particles, the energy of the subatomic particles being the equivalent of 347.2, right? And it was in Rendlesham all over the place, 347.2. This is the atomic scale, a subatomic scale. If we scale this up by only 1 golden ratio, we multiply by 1 golden ratio, we end up with the volume of the universe. So essentially what it says is that the universe itself is a fractal, is a simple fractal of the quantum space. So that video that we saw earlier, right, where it was kept zooming in, and the same fractal, the same structure just shows up over and over again. Essentially what this math is telling us here is that even the universe we live in, the big size of the universe is just a fractal, a mirror image of the quantum scale. And we see the match is 99.92% between what we'll find in classical physics and what this calculation shows. I represented it differently here, and this is also very, very recent discovery. Now, again, if we ratio that energy of the subatomic particles energy, 347.2, but this time we're keeping the exponents, right? It's very, very small, as we saw in the quantum scale, the smallest thing that can exist. And we ratio that over the size of the universe, which is really, really, really big. It's 561 by 10 to the power of 68 nautical miles cubed. That ratio match exactly 1 over golden ratio.
Wow.
We're coming back to this primordial fractalization of that unity, that number 1 here, at 99.93% of accuracy. I mean, the match is stunning. And the thing that actually in this ratio here, what surprised me even the most is that when we kept the exponents, right, going from by 10 to the power of negative 117, which is super small, and we ratio over the size of the universe, which is super big, the difference in order of magnitude is exactly 186. That's this figure here. So essentially there's 186 zeros of difference, order of magnitudes, between the smallest thing at the quantum scale versus the total size of the universe. And that 186, if you recall, match exactly that in sphere within the tetrahedron that we showed earlier, that harmonic 1868. That was encoded in the longitude of the Great Pyramid, which is equivalent to 432 squared, right? And I'll do it on the screen again. It's all coming back again. So if I do 432 and we square it, we get this factor 186, this harmonic. That is the number of zeros difference between the smallest thing at the quantum scale versus the size of the universe. So we're really, it's amazing. We're really looking at essentially a universe that's folded within itself, right? We have in our physical world, we have a sense of size, that things are big and small, but in reality, it's all one. It's all a singularity, if you will, and it's you know.
You got it. You got it.
And the last thing I wanted to show here, okay, where have we seen this? Well, let's go back to Rendlesham again. If we look at the distance between the UFO landing site in Rendlesham to the coordinates of the Nazca plane, that was one of the coordinates here, the distance was exactly 5,616 nautical miles. And 5,616 is exactly the size or the volume of the universe.
Wow. Wow.
How can this be a coincidence or an accident?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And finally, if you recall the golden ratio triangular craft, the video that I showed earlier of this manifestation that I've had 4 times already, this triangle is very special, right? So if we plug here on this side, the side B of this triangle, as being the energy of that Planck sphere we talked about, right? The energy at the subatomic scale, 347.2. By the geometry of this triangle, and I have the calculator here at the bottom. I use again, I'm not making up these numbers. This comes from softwares and calculations that are very accurate. Because of the shape of this very special triangle, the bottom segment here, the bottom segment will match 561.0, which match also the volume of the universe.
Wow. So
this golden ratio triangular graph is like a tool again, right? It's again expresses the very same dynamics, this universal dynamics from the quantum scale to the macrocosm to the size of the universe to the very high degree of accuracy.
Yeah.
And what I recently discovered, and will be part of the part number 2 when we go through the part number 2, Grant, if you look at this small segment here, again, if we follow the same principle, the segment will match 216 or the 432 divided by 2. This happens to match the radius of a singularity. So when we're going to go into black holes and singularity calculations related to portals, that's going to match that. And so that's something that I just discovered very recently.
Wow. Amazing.
And last segment, we just have a few slides to go. Finally, the expression of 1 over the speed of light harmonic C. We covered some of that in the last presentation, but I just want to show some of it again. There's some new revelations there. So this relates to gravity, right? So gravity is a big deal, obviously, because when we talk about creating device, anti-gravity device for space travel, or how the UFO, or, you know, traveling, or, I mean, talking about anti-gravity and so on. So having the knowledge of that, how this thing works, really opens the door to new technology and get us off this rock, right? This little rock, this little planet we're on.
Yeah.
In a way that's more significant. So how is this connected? Well, I'm going to show that in the next slide that the Earth gravity density itself, in terms of geometric harmonic, matches exactly this expression, 1 over the speed of light harmonic, 1 over 144, the letter C here. This is the calculation. So what I show here is that when we take if we go at the equator of planet Earth, the gravity acceleration at the equator is 9.78 meter per squared second. That's the acceleration, Earth gravity acceleration. And when we ratio that over the mass of the planet Earth itself, the Earth weighs 5.97 by 10 to the power of 24 kilograms, very heavy. When we ratio the gravity acceleration over the mass of the planet Earth, and we convert that into geometric harmonics, we get the reciprocal of harmonic 144.
Wow.
To a very high degree of accuracy. And what's also fascinating, by the way, is that this figure, this harmonic, once we express that in terms of frequency, in our frequency scale, matches the Schumann resonance. 7.84 versus 7.83. So it is likely that the Schumann resonance that we're actually measuring of planet Earth has a connection actually to this gravity density that nobody really has looked into really deeply. Even the moon gravity acceleration is based on the same expression. The moon is directly connected to the Earth Schumann resonance and the Earth gravity density in terms of geometric harmonics. So anyone can go on the internet, they will find that the moon gravity acceleration is here, 1.63 meter per square second. We convert that into, again, geometric harmonic. We get the equivalent of this harmonic 144 reciprocal again, very accurately.
Amazing.
And now what's interesting too is that many have speculated, I mean, it's kind of common knowledge that the moon has an impact on people, right? Even, I mean, if you just look at the fertility cycle, of females, right? It's the number of days matches the revolution or rotation cycle of the moon. We know that the moon, when it's a full moon, right, there seems to be an impact on people. Well, now we know why, because this harmonic, this gravity acceleration of the moon itself is connected to gravity acceleration of planet Earth. But also, as I'm going to show, this is the last slide, and I showed that slide in the last presentation, Grant, is that this harmonic is also connected to our brain waves, right? If we look at the hypnagogic state, our brain wave is between 7 and 8 hertz, so 7.83 hertz, which is a Schumann resonance, matches our brain waves at that frequency, and also is connected to the moon gravity acceleration. So we see where everything is connected. The moon, the Earth, and our brain waves is really a system here. And the accuracy is very high, 99.97% match. And Tesla had figured this out, by the way. I mean, he was using this, for, I don't recall if I told that story, but Tesla, one of the things he used to do was to sit in a chair with big balls of metals in his hands. Until he fell asleep, and when he fell asleep, this ball, fell on the floor. That woke him up in that fraction of second when he was in that state, had these genius ideas coming to him. And now it kind of makes sense because he was in a state where his brain waves were in harmonic resonance with this fundamental harmonic of light 144. And this ends this presentation.
Wow. When I look at this, Jimmy, I think you get the Newton stuff when he sort of revolutionized it, and then quantum physics. This is almost like a new thing that may take a couple of years, but I think you're the first guy to get to the bottom of this, that this the relationships and this sort of how everything is related to everything, and it's all connected to this one idea that comes out of Eastern mysticism and teachings and stuff like that. And it's channelers bring it up, and I'm just amazed that I'm honored to have been sort of the one of the first people to get to see this, because it's just, you look at it and you go like, I mean, he's on to something that's pretty significant here.
Well, thank you, Grant. And again, I always appreciate having the opportunity to present this material on your platform. I mean, really, my goal is to share this information with as many people as possible. Many people will pick it up, some have some background in engineering, science, and whatever. Yeah. And even just from a spiritual standpoint, there's things that are pretty deep there in terms of meaning and significance, and also connection to our galactic family. I mean, we see even through experiencers, even my own experience of other experiencers, there's connection to this. And also connection to the ufology, the history of ufology. I mean, how often, there's been documentaries about Rendlesham, for instance, and all these things, and people are turning around, but there's something really fundamental there that is communicated to us. It's just no doubt about it. And to me, it's very clear that the intelligence has been putting right in our face the building blocks of creation and how things work, and just waiting for us to pick it up and develop technologies that will be beneficial for humanity and free us from our current dependency, so we can take off this little rock we're on and start exploring and connecting with our galactic family. And I think it's all part of this great awakening that's happening right now.
They linked all the symbols and the mathematics back in the Egyptians, and then Rendlesham Forest was the next thing where you picked up on it, and it's the same thing. That's the message. It's this intricacy is how things are related, and when you start digging, you realize that it's all connected, and you can start to use this mathematics to understand what's really going on.
Oh yeah,
just fascinating.
And they are a very practical application to this. I was talking earlier about space travel and things like that, but if you just look at our brain waves, right? We know what state we need to be into to maybe access this information, or higher frequencies to access more information and things like that. That clearly Tesla seemed to have been understood and picked up on it. But also, even practically speaking, I didn't show it here. I have like a deck now, Grant. I think my slide deck is like 900 slides that I have. So I had to pick small fraction to make it understandable and focus on it. That was the hard part. But I can show, for instance, that we can create alloys and material in terms of material science and nanotechnology, that once we tune the energy of the material we're dealing with, that we're trying to develop, when we tune it to these harmonics, we get special properties. Just to give an example, if we take the aspirin, the aspirin, which is commonly known, which is known as the miracle drug, right? Nobody knew, even the science doesn't know aspirin is miracle like that. I found that you take the molecule of aspirin, you convert that into energy, you get and you feed that into the tetrahedron, you get exactly an harmonic 144, right? Wow. And same if you look at the atom of iron, which is the most stable atom that exists at the atomic level. That's why the stars, within the stars there's nuclear fusion, right? But when you have fused all the atoms that you could, and you reach the atom of iron, the nuclear fusion within the star can no longer proceed, because this is the most stable nucleus that exists. So I did the analysis on the nucleus of iron to see if there was something special. And once we introduce that energy within a dodecahedron, we get exactly harmonic 144 again, which shows the special property. So, and like the penicillin, right? The antibiotic, the penicillin. Also, I took that molecule at the molecule level, convert that into energy, and there's direct connection to these harmonics as well. So even in pharmaceutical science or in material science, once we understand that, we can fine-tune these atoms and molecules to these harmonics, and we get special properties. So there's really very practical application to all this.
Beautiful. Okay, so we'll do the second session, and hopefully the right person will see this one, and you may get some help, and you may get some somebody scientist that picks up on it and gets it out there and really publicizes it with you.
Yeah, I mean, again, my goal is to make this accessible, and
I think it's a matter of time because it's pretty obvious. You just have to watch it, that you can see that you're onto something very significant here in terms of how things work.
yeah, and
I'm honored.
next, and thank you, Grant, so much. I really appreciate it. And next part, the part 2, we'll start exploring the wall of black holes. And black holes, often people think more in terms of big black holes in deep space in the universe. But when we're going to be talking about black hole or singularities, we're talking about even at the atomic level, right? So even though the subatomic particles we're dealing with, the neutrons and protons, as the work of Nassim Haramein has demonstrated, actually, he's one of the pioneers in the field, which I really, really respect his work, demonstrated that the protons were actually mini black holes. And when we look at it that way, and we access that, we can access this infinite potential of energy, what often people refer as 0-point energy. And once we start, and that's what I recently discovered now, that this whole science of geometric harmonics, this harmonics of creation, 1:4:4:42 golden ratio, are directly connected to these singularities. And that's also encoded in Egypt. Again, I will demonstrate that. That goes pretty deep. And I think that's really, really, we're getting to the source of the consciousness level at that point, right? We're getting to that singularity, that source of all things. And so this is really, really new material. So we'll present some of it in part 2.
I'm honored. Thank you, Jimmy. And let's do it part 2, and we'll put out part 1, and we'll see where it goes. I'm just so honored to have been able to see this.
Well, thank you 1,000 times again, Grant, for providing your platform. Cannot thank you enough, and we'll be in touch for part 2.
Beautiful. Thanks a lot.
All right. Take care. Thank you.
Okay.